Welcome, everybody. We have a special guest today, Gabrielle Rutten, MD. She's the director of the Gary Craig Official EFT Training Center in Holland and in the Dutch language. Very proficient in all of this. And she and I are going to be talking about using optimal EFT in the Unseen Therapist for digestive issues. She's got a really unique case, which we'll be discussing in some detail. So let me bring on Gabrielle. Hold on a moment. Say hello to everybody, Gabrielle.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. So you have this case. I'm going to ask you about some details. Let's talk about the details of it first. It's a lady that had a digestive issue, a bloated belly for 30 years. Talk about the severity of what she tried to do with it and
yes,
background.
So, a 64-year-old lady with this bloated belly problem for quite a long time, and she did all kinds of, regular stuff and diets and what have you. But she entered our training in EFT, the gold standard EFT tapping training, about 2 years ago. So she had been working on it with tapping for quite a while.
And just to interject for a moment, she was a student of yours learning the tapping form of EFT and was not really acquainted yet with optimal EFT and the Unseen Therapist. I have that right?
Yes, but you see, the story itself shows you, because we keep saying optimal EFT and working with Unseen Therapist really is, an advancement to what we do with tapping. And her case shows this because she started with the gold standard EFT training, but then after like 4 months, she also started with the optimal EFT course.
Oh, okay.
And so I picked this case to discuss with you because it again, I should say, shows that working with Unseen Therapists, the way optimal EFT is structured, gave so much better results than only with the tapping. So I thought it's interesting to discuss the case just to make sure that the public understands why we're so enthusiastic about working with Unseen Therapists.
Yes. All right. So talk about the history of this case, the background.
Yes. So for 30 years on and off, she has had severe bloating of the belly. And so before she started working, it started 30 years off and on, every year, a couple of months, and then sometimes a little less, and then more. And so for about a year before she started working on it with EFT, it was like a 7, 8, 9 score between 0 and 10. And so very bloated, very bloated. Her clothing didn't fit anymore. So she had to buy bigger clothes. That's how bloated her belly was. Right. Nothing seemed to work. And so she started working with the tapping form and, got some result in the sense that it went down from, max of 9 to around 6, 7, but it would, come back time and again. So she wasn't really, happy yet with the results. And then she turned to optimal EFT and working with Unseen Therapists. And that is when things started to get very interesting.
Okay. I'm curious with the bloated belly, is there pain involved with that? Is it just physical discomfort? Is there irritable bowel syndrome going on or some other kind of issue?
Not really, full-blown irritable bowel syndrome, but painful bloating and uncomfortable and not being able to lie on her belly at night in bed if she wanted to, stuff like that. And again, her clothing didn't fit anymore. I mean, she really was, really unhappy with this bloated belly. She would complain. It's almost as if I'm pregnant. So
I'm curious about something. You were working with her. Did you work in person? Did you work on video conferencing? How did you work with her?
Yes. So to specifically address this issue, we did 5 sessions of 1 hour.
But my question was it on video conference or person to person?
Yes, sorry, a video conference.
So behind that question is, did you actually see her belly? Did she
stand? Yes.
Okay. Just so I get a picture, and people listening in get a picture. How does it compare to someone who is pregnant?
Well, I mean, like she was like halfway through. I mean,
Yeah.
like a nice big belly.
Yeah.
Not not literally like a pregnant belly, but somewhere in the beginning phase of a pregnancy. That's
Yeah.
how it felt. It felt heavy and bloated and uncomfortable.
All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Well, so the interesting thing is she did tap on it, on the symptoms, and she started looking at specific events that were, happening during the time that this all started, but she wasn't really getting anywhere. And then we decided to do 5 sessions. And here's what we did. First of all, and I'll talk about this a little further down the road, but problems of the abdomen, especially the intestines, point to situations where you're really irritated, annoyed, and annoyed, irritated, and usually quite subconscious. And so what I had her do is, in our first session, we started working with unseen therapist, and she is a wonderful meditator in the sense that she never meditated before, but she really loves, the personal peace procedure with unseen therapist. So I asked in our first session, help from unseen therapist to point out where to go. And so unseen therapist showed her in her first meditation that she needed to go back to her the childbirth events of her 2 children.
But let me stop you a second, just so everybody's sure. We have a way within our optimal EFT course to literally ask the unseen therapist, the spiritual dimension. We're asking God, what's going on here? It's a rather unique part of the therapy process, but we literally ask that. And it takes a skill to begin to get those answers. Anybody can do it, and it saves a boatload of time. So if I understand it right, you were asking, and then you're getting the answer having to do with the birth of her children.
Yes.
I heard it right.
Yes, and so she hears voices. So you can hear, all kinds of things can happen during the meditation, but this particular lady hears voices. So she heard a voice say, "Look at, the childbirth of your 2 children."
All right.
And so, I thought you wanted to ask me something.
No, go ahead.
So this is what we did, and now it ties nicely into what I just said, that abdominal problems, digestive tract problems, your intestines really point to irritation and annoyance. And so immediately it became clear that there were all kinds of specific moments at the end of her pregnancy of her first child, the way the childbirth went, the stuff around it. She was really irritated about lots of stuff. And so we worked with the unseen therapist on all these specific moments with a lot of irritation.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
We did the same thing. I mean, there was obviously other emotions, but irritation was a big thing. And she wasn't aware that she was so irritated all the time towards her husband, doctor, anybody that was involved.
Let me ask you something about that. It wouldn't seem, at least to the conventional thinking, that if somebody is irritated about things having to do with a childbirth, pregnancy, and this kind of thing, we're irritated. We get irritated about lots of things that people do. Okay, we're annoyed by this, and somebody says that, and somebody didn't do something right, and so we get irritated by that. we don't conventionally think, oh, gee, if I have an emotional irritation of some kind or annoyance, that's going to make my belly get bigger. I mean, how would you put those two together unless you had wisdom from another place? Because it's not in the medical books. I have that right?
Yes, indeed. It's not in the medical books at all.
Yeah.
And so, mhm.
Well, go ahead.
No, okay. No, so I want to point out that we worked because we did 5 sessions. So we worked, step by step. We went through both the childbirth events, after childbirth, and then she started working again, and she was irritated about not being a good mother. But for her, irritation, really showed up when we were looking for what are these events, and we combined this with her working for herself too with Unseen Therapist. So mind you, between the sessions, she would work on her irritations, her daily irritations. Why did I want her to do that? Because she had a chronic situation with this bloated belly. Now,
Yes.
these childbirths were 30 years ago. However, I would like to point out that when an issue is chronic, be that a psychological issue or a physical issue, you also have to look at more, daily triggers. Otherwise, something needs to keep the stress pattern going. And so, Unseen Therapist pointing out that irritation was a big thing, helped us concentrate on between sessions. She would work on daily stuff. And she said next time we saw each other, she was completely amazed at how irritated she was all the time. And she had no clue. So 2 tracks, the old stuff, pregnancy, and then her role as a mother, the little children, people around it. So all kinds of irritation and uncomfortable stuff around that. And the other track was her working with Unseen Therapist on her daily moments where she felt irritation.
And I would think that both the pregnancy, childbirth irritations and the daily meditation or irritations would have, and I can be wrong here, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this, would have a more foundation, clear back into childhood and this kind of thing. I mean, there's a foundation for these irritations.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you went there and what you found and that kind of thing.
Indeed, we did, because that is the third track. Because obviously, when you're around 30-ish and start giving childbirth and you're irritated about stuff, that doesn't start there. It bounces off from earlier stuff. And so her irritations are really, dovetailed with her negative core belief, I'm not good enough. And she was very irritated about not being good enough, or again, not being good enough, or doing stuff and feeling, so the other stuff that we worked on was early childhood stuff where this negative core belief played a role.
Sure.
So there's three pieces to this approach.
Yes.
Because, when you're 30, you have already learned how to react and how to deal with life, so to speak. So that doesn't just, drop out of the sky like a brick. It's already there.
Yeah,
yes,
sure. We are conditioned along the lines of our beliefs to behave the way we behave, to react and get annoyed and irritated and other stuff. So yeah, sure. Go ahead.
And so we did 5 sessions. In between, again, she did a lot of homework every single day on irritations, just daily irritations. She also did homework on the early childhood stuff. So all in all, my guess is we did, well, I think at least, 40 or 50 very specific events, big ones, small ones, all that. So it adds up if you do it every day.
Sure.
And then already in the 3rd session, she said, I woke up this morning, I was in front of my mirror and my belly was gone. I had a flat belly. She was so happy. She said, all my old clothes fit again. I recognize myself now when I look in the mirror. It's me. without, a big bloated belly. And so
Sure.
she was quite happy. And we finished all the stuff. And so at the end of the 5 sessions, obviously she had a better idea of what to look for, because irritations don't just go away. I mean, she had trained herself to be quite irritated about a lot of stuff. So that was a daily thing that she kept on doing. We worked on this nice chunk of very specific events that unseen therapist pointed out. Let's look there. And so at the end of these 5 sessions, she was, ready to move on and start doing other stuff, and keep an eye on her irritations, obviously.
Sure.
Because your negative core belief isn't something that you solve, in 5 sessions. You need to pay attention to it, because it pops up.
Of
in
course.
daily business.
Yeah. You wanted to mention something you told me before we recorded. You used the term chunk. Is this a time to discuss that?
Yes, let's do that. So
Okay.
the reason digestive problems, so your esophagus, your stomach, all of the intestines, all the way down to your anus, the whole digestive tract really reacts to a type of conflict that we want to call a chunk conflict. Now, what is a chunk conflict? Imagine it's literally, it would be a chunk of food. So these irritations and annoyances, there's even, sayings in the language that would point out that, something of your digestive tract is involved. Like, I can't stomach it, is a typical saying that would show that you are really irritated about something that you can't digest. It's heavy on the stomach, we say in Dutch. I don't know whether that's an English expression. Or it's heavy, it's lying heavy on my belly, we would say, in Dutch.
Yeah.
I can't digest it. It's
Yeah.
Those types of situations we call a chunk conflict. And they show up in the whole digestive tract. So my tip is, if you have problems, be that, can start in the mouth and where your anus is, have a look at what is irritating you. And the lower you get, so in the large intestine, it's mostly very subconscious. If you would throwing up is also a chunk conflict. It's like, zum Kotzen, we say in German, but I don't want this. That is the same example of being irritated, annoyed. I don't want this. I don't want to swallow this. And
Yes.
so I thought that was interesting to just point out that this whole area very readily reacts to these type of conflicts. It's about irritation and annoyance, and you can't stomach it. You can't digest it.
And Gabrielle, to my knowledge, not being a doctor, that's, again, nowhere in the medical books. Am I correct?
No. Yes, you are correct. Because I looked up what they said about irritable bowel syndrome. And no, this is based on what is called 5 biological laws, and it is a system of looking at physical problems that it has been developed by an internist oncologist. So it does come from the medical corner, if you will, but like me, he was a very alternative doctor. So he was absolutely convinced that unresolved emotional problems and emotional shocks were the origin of physical problems. And I agree with him entirely. So this comes from his work.
Well, that's basically our approach here with optimal EFT as well. The unresolved emotional issues are behind just about all of our ailments. So, Gabrielle, thank you. Anything else you want to mention before we close out?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
All right. With a great big thank you. Hold on one second here. We're going to close this out now. Be sure that you, with a big thank you to Gabrielle, Be sure that you check out the essential links below. Okay, they'll all be very helpful for you. So we're going to close out now. We'll see you next time.